So if you thought I actually cared about what the haters say about my opinion and all the people who are in the comments, there are not that many of you, trust me, I love you guys. Thank you all for supporting the videos. But for those of you guys who are like, oh, your opinion is wrong, you're wrong for thinking this, you're wrong for thinking that, and if you think I cared about that, well, I wouldn't be making a series of videos talking about The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and The Last Jedi. I just wouldn't. But here I am, and here we are. Welcome, one and all, to Star Wars Re-Examined. In this series of videos, we're going to be talking about all of the live-action Star Wars movies and rewatching them and re-examining them and looking at them with a different perspective. Look, the older that I've gotten, the more that I've realized how much other people's opinions really do affect the way we think about movies and television. Star Wars, I think, is the pinnacle of this. Not to get too much into politics or anything outside of movies, but it really is kind of like politics, right? You find the people that agree with you, generally, and you kind of join that bandwagon. And you only hear the voices that tell you the exact same things that you're thinking about. And what it's done is it's created this really dangerous, really deep divide between the Star Wars fan community. I've always said, at least for the past couple years, that Star Wars probably has some of the worst fans in all of Hollywood fandom. And I don't mean that as in you guys are the worst fans because you like Star Wars, or really anybody who watches my videos. All of you guys are generally very respectful. But I mean that for whatever reason, Star Wars fans just seem to take things too personally, if that makes sense. And at a certain point, they just go, all right, well, then I'm just going to listen to people who say the exact same thing as I do. And it's created this really weird, concerning divide in Star Wars. So what I want this series to be, first and foremost, and why I called it Star Wars Re-Examined, and not just rewatching Star Wars or the season of Star Wars or whatever, like I called the season of Spider-Man on this channel, is because I really want to re-examine how I view these movies. I want to re-examine these films, not just to nitpick and pick out everything that I hate about these movies, or really to talk about them the way that they're being talked about today, like the prequel haters and the prequel lovers. I just want to look at these films and truly and honestly reflect, not just for you guys, but also for me, for all of us, what I really think about these movies. I think it's honestly kind of a healthy way to look at Star Wars because, well, Star Wars is in a weird place right now. And I really have said this for a long time. I honestly do believe the Star Wars lore and the Star Wars canon, which is kind of getting broken a little bit here and there. It's always been getting broken, let's be honest, ever since the prequels were made. But I've always said the Star Wars lore and canon have been far more interesting to me than the actual films themselves. I think, honestly, and this might be an unpopular opinion, I've only seen The Phantom Menace so far, so we'll see, but I think the films themselves are ranging from not great to pretty good, but really what Star Wars is to me, and I'm not saying it has to be for you, absolutely not, that's the point of this series, is to point out that I have my own unique experience with Star Wars, and so do you, and that is fine. But I'm saying that for me, Star Wars has never been about the films. It's been about the story and the overall characters and the Force and lightsabers and Sith and Jedi. That's what Star Wars is to me, not the movies. So I really wanted to just take a step back and re-examine each film one by one and look at them now in the 2020s, removed from the prequels by many, many years, removed from the sequels by a few years, obviously removed from the original trilogy by many, many decades, and just see what I really think and feel when I watch these movies. So, without further ado, let's get into Episode 1, Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. And, well, I like this movie. And just like that, everyone's clicked off the video. Okay, so let me qualify what I mean by saying I like this movie. Is it a good movie, in my opinion? No, absolutely it is not. But, for the first time in what feels like 20 years, I enjoyed watching this movie. So the way that I'm going to do this review and the reviews in the future is I'm going to go through the plot of the movie generally and kind of go beat by beat and talk about all the things that I want to talk about within those plot elements. So that way you'll kind of get an idea of how I felt throughout the movie as I was watching it, what I was feeling during specific scenes, all that sort of stuff. So let's get into Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. So right off the bat, you get this opening crawl. And look, I haven't seen the other movies in a long time as well. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I haven't seen The Phantom Menace in what feels like maybe 10 years in its entirety. I really haven't seen any of these movies in their entirety other than the sequel trilogy and everything that came after The Force Awakens in a long time. That's really why I wanted to do this series, is because I had a feeling of what I felt about certain movies. Like, I kind of knew I disliked Attack of the Clones. I kind of knew I disliked The Phantom Menace, but I didn't really remember that feeling. I just kind of jumped on the bandwagons, I guess, because, you know, I'm as guilty of it as any of us are. But anyways, getting back to this opening crawl, immediately you see that it's about trade federations, blockades, taxes, politics. And right off the bat, it's just a little confusing. It sets up an interesting new take on Star Wars, I guess, if you haven't seen the film before, but it kind of makes you wonder what kind of movie are we getting into, especially for me who had seen the film before and realizing, oh yeah, this entire opening crawl is about politics. Now, politics in Star Wars can be really interesting. In fact, I think that the stuff that they do with the Imperial Senate and the Senate before during the Grand Republic, I think that's all really fascinating. I think for me, it was just a little interesting seeing how much of it was in the opening crawl. But okay, there it is. It's in the opening crawl. Let's move on. And then we get this opening set piece with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn, played by Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson. And honestly, I think most of this opening set piece is actually pretty fine. And I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about the CGI a little bit because honestly, I think that some of the elements of CGI in this movie still hold up. Some of the shots in space, some of the shots of the ships flying around, obviously the lightsaber work, it still looks really good. Some of the shots, though, we'll get to that with the Gungans, look really, really bad, but we'll get to that. All that to say, though, is that this opening set piece actually still holds some excitement for me. It still feels fun. It still feels like it's alive. Still feels like it's moving, which a lot of the sequences in the sequel trilogy honestly didn't have, at least in my memory. So I'm glad to have seen that in the prequels. And then they kind of end up on Naboo for some reason, and we're kind of randomly just introduced to what has become one of the most infamous characters in movie history, Jar Binks. Okay, so look. Do I like the character of Jar Jar Binks? Absolutely not. I think he is so annoying. I think he is just such a confusing character. But that leads me to one of my biggest points actually of the review, and one of the biggest things that I realized when rewatching The Phantom Menace. This is a movie made for kids. Now, I had kind of known this before, and it had kind of been said, George Lucas saying, Star Wars is for kids, that's why we include the Ewoks in episode 6, all that kind of stuff. I got that in my head, but there's a difference between knowing of that and actually knowing it. And when I was rewatching The Phantom Menace, I completely realized that plot beat by plot beat and story by story and character by character, this is a movie, save for a few moments where people get cut in half, I guess, and Trade Federation stuff that I guess kids don't understand. But most of this movie is a kid's movie. And that's why Jar Jar Binks is in this movie in the first place. It doesn't make it any better, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. Watching this movie now, with the lens almost like a parent watching a kid's movie that, yeah, they know isn't that great and they know has some really annoying stuff, but they also know that the kids would really love this, it kind of makes The Phantom Menace, I don't know, somewhat enjoyable, I guess? That being said, Jar Jar Binks is not great, but at least understanding why he's there in my head, it helps a little bit. But what doesn't help the case for that is that this entire movie kind of seems to be revolving around Queen Amidala signing a treaty, which is also something that I hadn't really remembered before. And now watching this movie, I was kind of alarmed at how much of the movie was about Newt Gunray and Emperor Palpatine, or I guess, Chancellor Palpatine, or not even Senator Palpatine, whatever he is in this movie, trying to get Queen Amidala to sign a piece of paper, I guess. And honestly, it kind of makes Palpatine's plan really confusing because his whole thing in this movie, I guess, is that he wants to be the Chancellor because they want to kick out Chancellor Valorum from the Senate. But if he gets Queen Amidala to sign the treaty, then he's the senator from Naboo, right? So doesn't that make him look bad? I don't know. It's really confusing. It kind of lends to this whole idea of Palpatine's plan in the prequels. While the whole turning Anakin to Darth Vader was really cool, the rest of it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so then Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi rescue Amidala and all of the Naboo royal people, and then the hyperdrive fails, and so they head to Tatooine, which again, if you're going off these plot beats of a kid's movie, yeah, there has to be an exciting race sequence in the middle, or there has to be, I don't know, some exciting obstacle course or something, where the kid kind of goes through it and is the underdog, but really triumphs at the end and becomes more and kind of realizes who they are. It's a kid's movie, right? And so that's what the pod race scene really is. And by the way, the pod race scene is still really exciting. It's still really, really well done. The sound effects, even just watching it with headphones on, is still so good. And I have to give credit to the movie for that. Again, at this point, it's about halfway through the film, and I'm enjoying it. I will say, though, that Liam Neeson's Qui-Gon Jinn does say and do some questionable things. Like, obviously, he rigs the dice game so that he can, free Anakin Skywalker from being a slave. And then he kind of I don't know, is a little ambivalent or flippant towards his mother, Shmi. He's kind of like, yeah, I'm not here to free slaves. What do you think I am, a Jedi or something? I mean, okay. I mean, I know in lore, Qui-Gon Jinn was never the most conventional Jedi, but still, it was kind of weird to see Qui-Gon just go like, yeah, no, you guys are suffering, but that's not my problem. Like, oh, okay. All right, then. And another kind of weird thing that I find kind of annoying in this film is that Qui-Gon basically says, so basically, to back up, Qui-Gon goes to Tatooine and Padme's tagging along because, of course, she is, because she's Natalie Portman, and Jar Jar Binks is because, of course, he's Jar Jar Binks, and R2-D2 is because, of course, he's R2-D2, and he has to meet his best friend C-3PO in the movie, who is, the unfinished version from Anakin Skywalker. But Qui-Gon goes to Tatooine, he meets Watto, and Watto's like, hey, yeah, I have the parts and whatever. And that's where they meet Anakin Skywalker, basically by happenstance. Okay, fine. And then later on in the movie, Qui-Gon explains it to somebody and says, it was the Force. The Force drew me, and it's not a coincidence. That's how I met Anakin Skywalker. I can buy that as a concept, that the Force would bring Qui-Gon to meet the Chosen One. Fine. There was nothing in this movie to indicate that was the case, though. Not even Qui-Gon kind of meditating and thinking, oh, I can feel the Force here. I'm looking for this child. I can feel the Force. No, he's just walking around, and he runs into Watto, and he's like, hey, there's a kid. Oh, by the way, he is. A lot of midichlorians. Now, midichlorians were something that when I watched this movie way back then, when I was really young, midichlorians were kind of cool. It was kind of a sciencey way to explain the Force, and back then I was like, yeah, I'm on board. For the first time, actually, they really bothered me in this movie. I finally understand why people are really annoyed at the midichlorian thing, because, and it was one very subtle thing, actually. If they had just kind of left it as midichlorians are these things that are parts of the cells of living beings, and they kind of interact with you in the Force and that kind of thing and help create the Force, I would have been like, that's cool, that's fine. What bothered me is when Qui-Gon asks Obi-Wan to do a midichlorian count, and Qui-Gon, or Obi-Wan, rather, says, hey, this kid has 20,000 midichlorians. Not even Master Yoda has that many. And that really took me out of the movie, because you're going to say that, Anakin is level 20,000, and Rey, Palpatine Skywalker is level 30,000, and Palpatine has 50,000. Like, I don't know. Something about attaching numbers to midichlorians and something about attaching those numbers to the Force. Yeah, I get it now. It's dumb. I don't like it. So then they head back to Coruscant after Anakin wins the pod race. He has this really touching scene with his mother. I actually kind of like it. I think Jake Lloyd is fine. He's a kid. Same thing that I kind of think about young Leia and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, they're fine. They're kids. It's fine. I don't really care that much. And it's cool seeing the Jedi Council on Coruscant. I think the idea of the Jedi Council is pretty cool, and you get to see, obviously, Samuel L. Jackson. You get to see Yoda again. I miss the weird, crazy, kind of off his rocker Yoda from Episode 5 and even Episode 8, The Last Jedi, but yeah, it's not that easy seeing this grumpy old version of Yoda who's just cranky and he yells at Obi-Wan at the end of the movie. I don't know. It's not really Yoda for me. And even though they did the CGI, there's just something about his face that doesn't look like Yoda from the sequel trilogy or from the original trilogy. He kind of looks meaner, I guess. Is that just me? I don't know. That might just be me. And then they head back to Naboo, and they meet the Gungans again, and Amidala reveals herself. That was just kind of a lame twist. I don't know. I don't think I would have seen that coming if I had seen the movie for the first time. Because when I saw the movie for the first time, I don't think I got anything that was going on in the movie. I just saw lightsabers and it was cool. But I don't think it was a very well-placed twist. But whatever, it's fine, I guess. And queens get elected in Naboo. It's kind of weird, but kind of cool at the same time. And look, it's the same trope that happens in so many movies, right? The native people of the planet have to help the outsiders defeat the enemy that they're both fighting. It's a classic movie trope. It's a classic kids movie trope. Not even just kids movies, honestly, just movies in general. And I wasn't bothered by it. I was bothered by the fact that they were Gungans. And the CGI on Boss Nass is so bad and so atrocious, and most of the Gungans are very bad. Most of even the tanks that the Trade Federation and the Separatists, or the to-be Separatists, use, it's just really, really bad. It makes a lot of the space stuff look really, really good when Anakin is flying around zipping through space, but anyways, I digress. And then Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are fighting Darth Maul. That lightsaber fight was really cool, although it's kind of weird that they just get randomly blocked by these red shield doors, and they have to wait for them to open, but whatever. It's fine. It's a nitpick. The Duel of Fates is amazing. Obviously, throughout this entire movie, John Williams' score is excellent. That's just a given at this point with Star Wars and John Williams. And yeah, Qui-Gon gets, stabbed, and he doesn't survive, unlike every other character in Star Wars who gets stabbed and does survive, which, okay. Darth Maul gets cut in half, and he will survive later on, obviously, in the Clone Wars. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the Clone Wars, or yes, Solo, A Star Wars Story, he was in that too. And that's the movie. Palpatine kind of gives a hint, hint, wink, wink. The camera pans to him after Mace Windu is talking about the rule of two with Yoda. And yeah, there's a celebration at the end of the movie with Boss Nass. Yeah, okay. And that's The Phantom Menace. And guys, I mean, honestly, I had a good time with this movie. I don't know what it was, if it was just me kind of accepting this is just a kid's movie and I'm just going to have fun with it or whatever, just me being more open-minded. And look, if you hate this movie to your very core, and if you think that this is the worst thing that Star Wars has ever done, and trust me, all of you will say that at one point or another during this series, whether it be Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, even, I don't know, Return of the Jedi, The Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, every single one of you will comment down below at some point. Hopefully you comment down below, by the way, at some point during this series and tell me this is the worst thing that Star Wars has ever done. And if this is it for you, if The Phantom Menace is it for you, I don't blame you. Honestly, I can see why. But for me, I was so pleasantly surprised at how much my opinion changed. And now what we're going to do at the end of every single one of these reviews is I'm kind of done just giving grades or recommending the movies. I mean, you can listen to my thoughts, and if you enjoy listening to my thoughts and kind of know, okay, I generally agree with Access Blockbusters or I generally disagree with Access Blockbusters, you can make your own opinion about whether or not you want to see the movie yourself. And it's The Phantom Menace. It's been out for over 20 years. But what I want to do at the end of all of these videos in this review series or this re-examining series is to talk about how my opinion has changed about the individual movie. I think that that would be far more interesting to close out the video. So, how did my opinion change about The Phantom Menace? Well, like I said before, like I alluded to before, I saw The Phantom Menace for the first time, not in theaters, but very close to when it was released for the first time, when I was very, very young. And again, like I said, I was just far too young to really know what was going on. But it was a great introduction to Star Wars. It was lightsabers, it was aliens, it was droids, it was tanks, it was lasers, it was space. It was just awesome. And I treasure that to this day. The Phantom Menace was really the introduction for me for Star Wars. And that is something that will always have a special place in my heart. Now, as the years went on, obviously, the prequel hate bandwagon began to erupt, and yeah, I'll be honest, I joined it, But also, I think I legitimately didn't like the movies, and I don't know if it was just the place I was in my life growing up or whatever, but it wasn't just that I joined the bandwagon, but rather that I really didn't like the movie because, again, I actually tried to start this rewatch a year ago. Not that long ago, actually. About a year ago. And so I turned on The Phantom Menace, and I was like, yeah, this movie's fine. You see Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn on the trade ship, and they're fighting droids, and it's fun. And then Jar Jar Binks showed up, and for whatever reason, I couldn't watch the rest of it. I stopped at that point. And so I was kind of dreading coming into this movie again and having to see that and just having to trudge through Jar Jar Binks. And honestly, for whatever reason, whether or not it was just me having a more open mind or whatever it was, I just enjoyed the movie a lot more. And I'm really happy about that because, I mean, it sucks, right? It sucks to have to look at Star Wars and go, I love the lore, I love the characters, but I just hate half of the movies. And I'm really hoping that coming out of this re-examination series, that I just gain an appreciation for all of the movies. We'll see. Attack of the Clones is next. We'll see. But fingers crossed. So guys, that is it for my thoughts on The Phantom Menace after having rewatched it in 2022. Thank you all so much for watching and supporting the channel. Look forward to obviously many more videos. Attack of the Clones is next. I'm really interested to see what I think about that movie when I rewatch it. But again, thank you guys so much for supporting and watching the channel as always. And if you like this video, well, please be sure to subscribe, turn on the notification bells, leave a comment down below with your thoughts on The Phantom Menace. Please be sure to give this video a like, and that'll do it. I'll see you next time with Attack of the Clones.